Unrest in Iran is reaching a peak, with the death toll has crossing over 60. Trump has warned that if he would strike again if the protesters are targeted, stating that Iran is in big trouble and that America is watching these protests very, very carefully. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has called for the U.S. intervention and called on protesters to continue the street demonstration for 2 more nights and seize the city's centers, while urging energy and transport workers to start nationwide strikes. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, in his first major address since protests erupted 2 weeks back, has accused the demonstrators of acting on behalf of the American government. He has called Donald Trump arrogant, added that Trump will be overthrown soon. However, the protests, which began over Iran's struggling economy, has now become a direct challenge to the clerical regime. A senior Iranian official has issued an extreme warning against America amid rising tensions over protests in Iran. He said that Iran should capture American President Donald Trump, comparing it to the recent capture of the Venezuela's leader. The diaspora has urged international leaders to closely monitor the situation, warning that memories of the 2019 blackout and bloodshed make the current moment extremely dangerous, with renewed calls for protests again tonight.
So Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. We're watching the situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts. And that doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts. So we don't want that to happen. There have been cases like this where President Obama totally backed down. But this is something pretty incredible that's happening in Iran. It's an amazing thing to watch. They've done a bad job. They've treated their people very badly, and now they're being paid back.
پیامی دارم برای هم‌میهنانمون در خارج از کشور. اکنون نقش بسیار مهم و کلیدی رو می‌توانید ایفا بکنید. از همه مهمتر در شرایط کنونی ادامه تجمعات در سطح شهرها و کشورهای خارجی است و همچنان اطلاع رسانی به نهادهای سیاسی، دولتی و رسانه‌ای. شما بایستی تا آنجا که ممکن هست ارتباط بگیرید، حالا چه از طریق تلفن، چه از طریق ایمیل، و ادامه این خبر باعث میشه که موضوع ایران اولویت داشته باشه، فراموش نشه. ما نباید بگذاریم این صدا خاموش بشه در سطح جهانی. بدانند که مردم ایران با مشکلات وسیعی که دارن همچنان با شهامت کامل این مبارزه رو ادامه میدن و آنها نیز با دانستن اینکه شما تلاش خودتون رو در خارج انجام میدید.
Your help. Let me tell you what is happening in the internet blackout in Iran. Right now, mainstream media like BBC are deliberately refusing to cover news on Iran uprisings. We need you to share far and wide. Yesterday, January 8, Iranians came to the streets following a direct call from our Prince Reza Pahlavi, exactly 8 p.m. local time. People were sending videos that was showing a tsunami of people everywhere. The crowd was becoming bigger and bigger, and after a few hours, the regime panicked and followed its old playbook. It imposed a complete nationwide internet blackout. Apparently, they are even cutting phones too. We gotta urge Israel and the US President Trump, Netanyahu, and Marco Rubio to monitor closely and consider targeted surgical strikes on besieged bases in each neighborhood. Israel have the intelligence and the tool and have already targeted some of them. We need them to finish them all.
Okay, now to get a sense of what really is happening to Iran, in Iran, and what could happen, we are being joined by all my colleagues, Siddhant Mishra, Akanksha Swaroop, and of course Sanjay Suri. Sanjay, to you first. What does it look like to you? Do you think the America is playing a wait and watch game just to see how long the protests carry on?
You know, we are looking at a very difficult balance of conflicting uncertainties here. Certainly, it would appear that Trump will have to stick to his word. He has said that if they start killing people, the US will step in to do exactly what is not known. But if only to appear un-Obama-like, it's very likely that Trump will step in if this continues and if the crackdown continues in the face of these rising protests, and the protests are rising without doubt. What exactly Trump will do is not clear. He has spoken of being locked and loaded. Presumably, that means that missiles are loaded and they are locked onto their targets, and those targets inevitably will be the center of the regime and its strong arm. How far that will help is certainly not known. It's clear that people are rising against the present regime, and particularly the economic policies and the economic crisis that has been brought on by inflation and the falling real. But whether US intervention, whether the intervention now of Pelvi, who has been someone who has been supportive of Israeli strikes into Iran, whether that will be accepted is uncertain.
You know, Kanksha, one thing we notice is that a large number of women who are out and about. I mean, you know, those pictures of them smoking a cigarette, you know, some of them pointing a finger at Khamenei's pictures, you know, kind of defiant. One of the protests also has been on the conservative culture, society of Iran, the hijab, the compulsion of wearing that. When women come out to protest, do these send out a much more messaging, not just to Iran, but to the rest of the world as well?
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid question, Pallavi. There's much closure that was needed to the 2022 protests that gripped Iran after the killing of Masha Amini in police custody. Remember, that time around, they were called Women, Life, Freedom. And yet there was no closure found. So this time around, in fact, it's a wider feminist movement that is now shaping up these protests, which, as Sanjay already highlighted, began, say, with a tanking rial. You're looking at inflation, which is at 40% high in just over a decade. And the traders, the university students, they all had it. But in the last few days, as we are seeing women take to the streets in full force, that image that's going viral is of one of the protesters actually lighting her cigarette by burning the Ayatollah's image in itself speaks volumes. And they're all burning their headscarves. They're done with the hijab. They're done with the Sharia. And this time around, what's more threatening to the Iranian regime is how they are ballooning into a wider Iran national movement. Because last time around in 2022, or say even if we go back all the way since 2009, because remember, Iran has been facing these kind of protests for over a decade and a half, 2009 to 2019, then 2021 and 2022. But there's been no closure as such. This time around, what you're seeing is that women have taken to the streets just like the way they did in 2022, but it's a wider movement. You also have the youth from the universities. You have the Tehran bazaar merchants who were also back then involved in 1979 when the Shah was dethroned. But more importantly, it's also reaching the hinterlands of Iran. And you're looking at the subaltern narrative also pick up, because remember, a tanking economy doesn't work in favor of anybody. So you have the conservative Iranians who were in fact for a long time even supportive of the Ayatollah. This time around also they have had it, and it's the middle class also that is stepping forward. But to come to the role that women are playing, they have taken to the streets in full force, and perhaps they want closure. Look at the way they are all participating in the protests, the kind of imagery that is coming in, the narrative building, and there's a lot of support coming in from the diaspora community, of course. Donald Trump already has taken this as a challenge head on. Will he actually send boots on the ground is the question, given that Reza Pahlavi is already...
I want to ask this question. Akansha, I'm just going to come back to you. I want to ask this question of Siddhant. What is it in it for America, for Donald Trump to keep on making these statements and says, you know, you watch out, I could be coming?
Well, Pallavi ma'am, Donald Trump is very unpredictable. And I have a very unpopular opinion, which many of you will not perhaps agree to. But I still believe that the regime has a very strong back channel with the United States. In fact, if you see the history of this regime after the removal of Shah, It's not the first time that protests are taking place in Tehran, Mashhad, and other parts of Iran. Definitely, this time the protests are massive. Large number of people are coming on the streets. Economy is not performing. A lot of crisis situation. In fact, yesterday, Supreme Leader announced $7 per Iranian, a direct cash transfer scheme to keep the protesters calm, things like that. So, in fact, he also assured that at the highest level, the reforms are being planned. The top officials, the best officials have been deployed to deal with the situation. But as I said, that I still believe that the Iranian regime has some kind of a very strong back channel with the Americans, because in the past also there were several opportunities with the American regime to overthrow, topple the Iranian regime, but they did not do that. In fact, in June also, after Israel struck nuclear sites in Iran, then United States came into the picture. So definitely, Prime Minister Netanyahu will definitely be wanting to use this opportunity, to take mileage of the situation, and he may, go after. He may persuade or be asking America to intervene. Reza Pahlavi has been asking America to intervene. But as I said, that they have a very strong back channel. So let's see how things unfold. Also, Pallavi, very last point that I would like to make here, that Reza Pahlavi is going to Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday.
Okay.
He's there to attend an event. Now, there is no confirmation whether he'll be meeting Donald Trump or not. So if he meets Donald Trump, perhaps that would also be a kind of a signaling that US is doing, officially backing Reza Pahlavi, point number one. Point number two, Pallavi, even when Donald Trump was asked about Reza Pahlavi to be sent to Iran, can he lead the country? His reply was not very encouraging for Reza Pahlavi. He said that there are many who can go to Iran, something on these lines. So, as I said, Donald Trump is highly unpredictable. Also, given Pallavi, very important that people are against the regime, but IRGC is loyal to the Supreme Leader. Their paramilitary force is loyal to the Supreme Leader. The other people in the government are still loyal to the Supreme Leader.
Okay.
So, unless the fault line starts appearing in these departments, military, IRGC, perhaps it is very difficult because Iran is also a military power in the region.
I'll just come back to you, Siddhant. I'm going to go to Sanjay after this, but before that, let's try and understand why is it that Iran is witnessing this widespread turmoil. As per the media reports, there are rising prices, economy is in a very bad shape, high inflation, unemployment. All of this has put a tremendous amount of pressure on the ordinary Iranians, triggering a widespread anger over falling living standards. Strict controls on political activity, limited freedom of expression has left little space for dissent, making street protests one of the few outlets for public frustration. The strict enforcement of mandatory hijab laws, broader social control has sparked repeated protests, especially among women and young people. Security forces have used force to disperse demonstration, with media reports of deaths and arrests further inflaming public outrage. Accusations of corruption, lack of transparency and privileges enjoyed by the ruling elite has deepened resentment against government institutions. Is this a reason enough, Sanjay? Is it about the oil? Is it about the resources? Is it because all this, hijab, no right to dissent is actually nothing new, I would say, when you talk about Iran. What, in your assessment, is different, if there is anything, this time around?
The clear provocation, the clear trigger for this level of unrest really has been economic. There has been a level of inflation that people have found difficult to bear. The fall of the rial has been, to an extent, beyond limits, beyond anything foreseen earlier or anticipated. So it's hit people on the food plate, it's hit them in the pocket, and that's what they've come out against. It's not some newfound love for Trump or Trump's protege, if you like, by way of Pahlavi. We have to bear in mind that there is a question that without doubt, there is a very high level of anger against the present regime. But will that spill over into an embrace for a leader living in Washington who is close to Trump, who has been close to Netanyahu, has gone and met Netanyahu, shook hands with him, who has refused to condemn the Israeli strike on Iran? That is a question, whether this level of unrest and opposition to the regime will therefore result necessarily in an embrace of an American or Israeli puppet, as many will see him. There is a question there. Without doubt, we've heard slogans and we've seen reports of slogans in support of Pahlavi, but we are a long way yet from embrace of this, perhaps this possible new leadership that is countrywide and that enjoys mass support.
All right. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Thank you very much, Akanksha. And thank you, of course, Siddhant. Let's see, Siddhant, whether your different theory is going to be proved right. That's all we have time for now into this before we head into a break. But news does continue over here on CNN News 8.